Hello, I'm Adrian Gschent from Zasuko. This is my colleague Michael Rauch. We would like to show you a bit what we did with so-called domain-specific languages. We are doing a lot with RDF, and in the past we did a lot with relational databases. A lot of customers want to map relational databases or CSV files, things like that, to RDF. I think about a year ago I started complaining to Michael that this is a lot of work when you work with mapping languages in that domain, in particular R to RML or the superset RML. You will write a lot of triples, and it's very easy to make copy-paste errors and do things wrong, reference tables you don't have, things like that. So it's not really fun to do, and Michael brought in an idea which he knew from previous shop. It's about domain-specific languages, and Michael, maybe you can quickly explain what they are when you use them.
Yeah, domain-specific languages can help a lot in basically allowing us to express things more concise in a more concise way. And domain-specific means the language is for a specific domain, so it's like a closed world where we express certain things, where the concepts are very concrete. So it's like on the other end of a general purpose language. So for example, Turtle would be a general purpose language to express any kind of triples. And the DSL we have here just is specific to mapping data to the RDF world. So it helps us to be more concise and to in the end make it easier to edit and express things, in short.
So when we started with that, I basically asked you, can you start playing with that? Can you see how far you go in, I think it was just a few days initially. And you talked about a framework which is available within Eclipse, and what we present to you now is basically based on that. Maybe you can show a bit what we have right now, what you're using for that.
Yeah, we use the Xtext framework, which I know from previous projects I did. The Xtext framework comes out of the Eclipse ecosystem, and it brings several parts. So you have a language that you define that's like at the core, and all the rest of Xtext is grammar driven or language driven. So you get a parser for that language, editor support, and you can also easily write the generators to create something out of the DSL. And Xtext is already a very mature project, so it's quite easy to get started, and you don't need that much time to already get good editor support.
So what we want to show you is basically, we call it version 0.9. We on purpose don't call it 1.0 yet, of something which we internally use for about a year now. You started creating that for me, later you started using it. We started talking to clients, so that's why we now brush it up and make it available. This is basically the version we release. You can download that. There's a blog post about it which describes why we do it and how you can install it. So please play around with it, but don't take this as a finished project. There are likely things changing, but we want to give you at least an idea of how it works and how you can work with it, how you can try it on your own. So there are several parts, as Michael said. We have the editor itself. We can write mapping files. We have a language which is uniquely tailored at mapping tables, table-based data basically. And then in the end, it will output RDF. It will output R to RML mappings or RML mappings. So you can use that with whatever software you use for talking to a relational database or CSV files. So Michael will give a little bit an idea of the language, and then we ask you to play with it and give us feedback.
Okay. What's important to know before we start is that we implemented the features that we needed to do the mappings we had at hand from practical projects. So we don't cover the whole, the complete R to RML or RML specifications. So there are things you can express with RML that the DSL as it is right now doesn't support it. So we just implemented what we needed to do the mappings we had, concrete mappings we had in projects. Here you see an Eclipse that has the DSL extensions installed. And you also see here on the left side in the Package Explorer that we imported the 3 example projects that you can clone from GitHub. The files we have open here are from the permit mapping example. And what you see is there are basically 3 files with the extension XRM for experimental RDF mapping. Those are the files that are where you basically describe your mapping, and in the source gen folder is where the R2RML and RML mappings are generated. So the idea here is that you can use the DSL to easier write your mapping, but you get RML output or RML output to continue with tooling that already exists. So once you have defined your mapping, you don't need to use all the Eclipse or editor things anymore, but you can continue with the mapping with already existing tooling. What we will do is we will start here with the mapping file. So in this example, we are mapping data from a relational database, and we have two different resources. One is an agency that we are mapping, and the other one is a permit. So we have permits that an agency has authority over to issue those permits. That's sort of the concept behind that. Let me just show you some examples here. So in a lot of parts in this DSL, you have references to other parts that you describe somewhere else. So for example, we map the agency from somewhere, and this somewhere in this case is a relational database table. And the editor allows you to navigate to the elements that you reference, and that is Control-click or Command-click if you're on a Mac. And when you do that, basically it takes you to the place where this element that you're referencing is defined. In this case, this is a table of a relational database. So here we ended up in another file. In this file, we have the definition of the 2 tables we are mapping from. One is the agency table. That's this one here. And the other one is the permit table, the second table. You also see that we have referenceables defined. Referenceables is, in this case, it's just a list of columns. In other cases, this could be the columns in a CSV file, or it could also be referenceables in XML or in JSON files once we import support basically JSON or XML, which is at the moment not the case. So right now it's just columns in database tables or in CSV files. So here we list the tables that we have and the columns in there. So I'm going to go back to the mapping file. Next thing I want to show you here is that you can have, the editor gives you code assist. So if you put the cursor somewhere and press Control space, you get the code assist. In this case, the language knows that we are referencing a table, and in this example, we only have 2 tables defined, the ones we saw before, the agency table and the permit table. So it only gives you those 2 options to choose from. In the lower part of the mapping, we have the different properties. Here we're mapping from columns from the database. So here's the same thing. If I open the code assist here, it will show me the columns I have defined for this database. And what you see here is that it only shows the columns of the agency table. So it doesn't show you the columns from the permit table, because in this mapping, we only map from the agency table. So in the agency mapping, we map from the agency table, so it will only give you columns from that table. If I will go to the second mapping for permits, Here I'm mapping from the permit table. If I do code assist here, it will show you the columns from that respective table. So the editor is smart enough to know what are the valid elements that you can reference. We will not go into all the details because I think you maybe already have read through the documentation, or if not, the best thing is just to check out the examples and have a look. Whenever you change something in the mapping definition and save the files in the resource gen folder will be regenerated. So if you remove something and save, it will be immediately regenerated. We can have a look at those files. So this is classic R2RML in Turtle. So the good thing is you can basically, if you know R2RML already, you can try out the language and just see what it generated for you and see if that makes sense for you or not. One last thing I want to show is what happens, for example, if I change here the definition of the columns that I have, so I can uncomment one of the columns, and what will happen is that the reference I have now in the mapping to this specific column is not resolvable anymore, because it's for real reference. It's not just a name, but there's a linker behind that will try to resolve this reference, and you see you get an error because the element is not there anymore. So that means if one idea that we have is to later on generate those source descriptions from basically from existing relational database tables or from the CSV headers. So if you imagine that you have a CSV file and the next time you want to transform it, like the headers changed, somebody moved things around, the headers are not in there anymore, you will get the editor here would help you to detect those problems, because the mapping has to be adjusted to be able to cope with changes in CSV headers, for example. So that's the last thing I wanted to show here.
Thanks a lot. I think that gives a very good impression of what you can do with it. We use it, as I said, for around a year. It helped me map really big databases, and it's so much easier when the thing supports you. So it's not just the DSL, it's really the whole environment we get within Eclipse here, which gives us basically content assistant and gives us the option to pre-select stuff which makes sense. Again, as Michael said, there is still some stuff you need to generate. These source files right now, this one here, you need to generate that manually. This could be easily done by introspection to a database or by analyzing the header in CSVs. Obviously, we want to be able to do the same thing on XML files, on JSON files with RML or even JSON-LD contexts. I have a list of ideas of what we would like to do on the website, and if this is something which is of interest for you, feel free to contact us. We are more than happy to prioritize features based on demand, basically. So again, you can play around with that for free. The source code is right now not published. We will think about that later, but it's mainly for us to get some ideas of if this is of interest for other people and how they use it. Thanks a lot for your time. We might do a follow-up with more details, but start playing with it. Bye.
Bye.